This is the vocabulary PowerPoint for chapters 9 through 11 of Bud Not Buddy. Devoured is the first word up. It is a verb meaning that you enjoyed something in a way that showed you were excited about it. Another word or a synonym for devoured is consumed, inhaled, ravaged, or absorbed. So whenever I think about someone devouring something, I think about Garfield devouring spaghetti. But in the book it says, I am very impressed. You really devoured that book, didn't you? But it's time to close now. You may start up again first thing tomorrow. So devoured doesn't have to be food. It can be anything that you consume in a way that shows you enjoyed it. Ventriloquists are performers who are able to speak in a way that makes it appear that the words are being said by a large doll called a dummy. So a ventriloquist is a type of entertainer or performer. In the book it says, I turned my head and talked sideways out of my mouth like I was one of those ventriloquists. So Bud was trying to talk without people realizing he was doing so. Gory is an adjective that means having or showing a lot of violence and blood. So some synonyms are offensive, bloody, or horrible. Some opposite words or antonyms are pleasant or pleasing. So if you're watching a horror film or a film that's rated PG-13, it might be because it is gory. In the book it says, I didn't want to tell her that I wasn't really interested in history. It was just that the best gory pictures in the world came from the Civil War. So the Civil War was very bloody, and so if you were looking at Civil War pictures, you might see a lot of gore and call them gory. Piped is a verb meaning to start talking or to say something. So if someone piped in, they wailed, spoke, sobbed, or shouted out. So the opposite or antonym of piped would be to listen or listened. In the book it says, Billy said, well, 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 will you take a look at who piped up, Mr. Bugs? You know, I've seen lots of people who have roach-infested houses, but you're the first person I've seen who's got a roach-infested head. So piped was not used in a good way in this sentence. Billy is saying that Bugs piped in or he was speaking out. Remember as we go through the PowerPoint that anytime you see a word that is new to you or has a different definition than you're used to, you can pause and add it to your personal dictionary. Crick is a noun. There are multiple definitions for crick, but in the text it says that little idea had gone and sneaked itself into being a mighty maple, tall enough that if I looked up at the top of it, I'd get a crick in my neck. So you can imagine if you looked at something very tall for a long period of time, that you would have a sudden pain, especially in your neck or back, that is caused by tight muscles. It is an ache, cramp, pain, kink, or twinge. So the opposite of having a crick would be to have comfort or health. As you can see over there, you have a duck giving you some advice about what to do if you get a crick in your neck, and a woman telling you to use pillows to prevent a crick in your neck. Belt. We know the noun belt, but belt can also be a verb. It means to drink something quickly, to gulp, guzzle, chug, or down a drink. The opposite of belting something would be to sip it. In the book it says, after a couple of seconds he pulled the bottle away from my mouth. Hold on, don't belt it all down the first pull. There's plenty there. So you can imagine Bud having a drink, and if he was very thirsty, he might try to belt it down, just as this Sprite is being belted down. A slew is a large number of people or things. So you could have a slew of people, a lot of people, or a slew of things. A batch, a bunch, or an abundance is another way to say a slew. The opposite of having a slew of something would be to have an individual thing, or a lack or a debt or something. In the book it says, we hadn't been driving for a minute before he started asking me a whole slew of questions. And so that made me think, if I were to teach a lesson like what seems to have been taught behind this teacher or professor, I would imagine that people would have a slew of questions. A glimpse is to look at or see something or someone for a very short time. You could also say that you glance, peek, or sight something. The opposite of glimpse would be to stare. In the book, it says, he said, "Well, I'll be. You know, at first glimpse, I wouldn't say you look that much like Herman. But now that I look at you, I suppose you do." So, at first glimpse gives you a clue that you're not talking about looking at something for a long period of time. You're just seeing it briefly or for a short period of time. Something about public transportation, if you were going very fast, you might only catch a glimpse of a sign or the things around you. You wouldn't be able to sit there and stare at it. A spitting image is a noun. It means someone who looks very much like someone else. You might call them a doppelganger, a clone, twin, or look-alike. The antonym of a spitting image would be the opposite. So you can see here a picture of Hermione from Harry Potter and another girl who looks a lot like her. It is not the same person, but she is a spitting image of Hermione. In the book, it says, he said, "Well, I'll be. You know, at first glimpse, I wouldn't say that you look that much like Herman, but now that I look at you, I suppose you do." Of course, he's quite a bit bigger, if you know what I mean. This was the best news I'd had all day. My face nearly split in half from my giant smile. Yes, folks. Yes, sir, folks say I'm the spitting image of my old man. So someone is saying that Bud looks a lot like Hermione Calloway. And Bud agrees and says, "I'm the spitting image of my old man." He thinks that he looks just like Hermione Calloway. Paltry is an adjective. It describes a noun. It is very small or too small in amount. You could also use a synonym, which could be insignificant, meager, pitiful, puny, or trivial. The opposite or antonym of paltry would be big, large, important, substantial, or significant. In the book, it says, a man answered, "Well, he was walking all the way from Grand Rapids to Flint. It looks like he provided a pretty paltry meal for every mosquito on the way." So Bud was very tiny, so it said he was a paltry meal. He was too small for the mosquitoes to get much blood. Knickers is a noun. Knickers are loose-fitting pants that reach just below the knee, so they are short slacks or trousers. In the book it says, "Shucks, they'd taken off my knickers when they put me in this bed. Now I was going to have to pretend I was asleep even longer, at least until I could figure a way out of being so embarrassed." So Bud was very tired and, as we will see in a future slide, had very ragged and maybe tiny clothes. So someone had put him to bed and he was talking about his knickers or his trousers. Don't forget as we go along that if there are any new words to you, to pause the video, add them to your personal dictionary so you have them to refer back to. Puny is the next word. It is an adjective, so it describes nouns or pronouns. Puny means small and weak, not very large, impressive, or effective. So another word for puny is feeble, frail, tiny, trivial, or measly. The antonym of puny is important, significant, or strong. So in the book it says, "From the quick look I got at you, you seemed a little on the puny side. I'll bet anything you're hungry." So someone had seen Bud, and from the quick glance or quick look they got at Bud, they thought he was on the small or puny side. He seemed weak, and so they are saying that he needs some food. Tatters are clothes that are old and badly torn. The opposite of tattered clothing or tatters are your Sunday best, your finery, your garments. In the book it says, "The woman said, 'What kind of man is he that he lets the child be so thin? And look at the condition of the boy's clothes. Everything is either too small for him or almost in tatters.'" So Bud's clothes, having been on the run on the lam, are not in the best state. They are tatters. Scrawny is an adjective. It is a word that means very thin in a way that is not attractive or healthy. So if I think about Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas, he is very bony, lanky, skinny, so you might also describe him as scrawny. The antonym of scrawny would be plump, overweight, or heavy. In the book it says, the little girl said, "That's a strange name, Button Up, Buddy." And even though she was kind of young and scrawny to be teasing folks, I could tell that that was exactly what she was doing. There's a little girl, it describes her as little, and then it describes her as scrawny. So you can get this image of this little, scrawny, lanky, skinny girl who is picking on Bud. That is the vocabulary video for chapters 9 through 11.